What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So today we are back going to be talking about Survivor, but not US Survivor this week. And for this season, we are going to be talking about Survivor South Africa Season 9 Return of the Outcasts. So my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa, and this is a bit of a doozy of an episode for us because Survivor South Africa is putting out like mad episodes every week. And so the first four episodes are actually considered like week one. So, like, if you look at the Wikipedia, there's 6 weeks. I think each week has four episodes in it. And so it's a lot of content, but it's a lot of really interesting content. And I feel like it kind of like helps the story move along a little bit faster when you like get the conclusion more quickly than you would have otherwise. So yeah.
Yeah, so in this podcast, we're going to be talking about episodes 1 through 4. That is considered week one. For our familiarity with Survivor South Africa, we have seen seasons 6, 7, and 8. We watched season 6 and 7 and podcasted about them, not live when they were airing. And then we podcasted about season 8, the last season of Survivor SA, live. So that's our familiarity. We haven't seen seasons 4 and 5, but now after seeing this returnee season, we might have to go back and watch seasons 4 and 5 because if you're unaware, for Survivor SA, they like had the show and then the show ended, and then starting at season 6, they like restarted the show. So from certain people for this Survivor SA season, this returnee season, they haven't been playing Survivor. It's been over a decade, like they said on the show. So watching the show also, I watched episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4 the day that they aired. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Alyssa watched them all today. So a little bit more of a binge.
Yeah, and I thought it was good for me, I think, to do it more in a binge just because I didn't forget who people were that way. I feel like one of the problems with a returning cast where you haven't seen all of the seasons is you kind of get lost with all of the people, especially because I personally didn't remember a lot of the season 6 or 7 cast very well. Like, I recognized their names and their faces, but like I couldn't remember my opinions of them whatsoever. I was texting Rachel while I was watching, and I was like, did we like this person when they were playing? So yeah, it was interesting to binge watch it all and kind of remember and absorb the players that way.
Yeah, overall thoughts. I sort of like this format. 4 times a week, 4 45-minute episodes is sort of a lot. But at first, I thought, okay, the first 2 episodes, we only had one person go home. So if it was just 2 people going home a week, I thought that was very, very manageable. But then it turns out episodes 3 and 4 were like regular Survivor episodes, 45 minutes, you do the challenge, and one person goes home. So then to have 3 people go home this week, that's when it starts to get a little bit unmanageable. I don't know. I feel like so sad. Oh my gosh, 3 people were gone this week compared to if it were just 2 episodes, one person goes home every 2 episodes. So I would be interested to see next week if it's 4 people going home over each episode, or if it's still going to be maybe 2 or 3 people going home and they do more cliffhangers or things like that.
Yeah, I guess how many people are in the cast? Because if there's 24
20.
episodes, yeah, so they have to have at least 4 episodes where no one goes home. Otherwise, they run out of people before the finale.
There's a secret Exile Island twist that they haven't said. But
Oh
I
my
thought
god.
only 45 minutes a day, if you're just watching them like I did once a day, it was very, very manageable. It honestly felt too short. I was like, only 45 minutes. This is so sad when it ended. And then I had to wait a whole day to watch the next one to see what would happen.
I mean, honestly, it was manageable even watching them all at once for the week. Like, I sat down with my dinner and I watched it while I was eating dinner, and then I kept watching after I put my plate away. And like, I still had plenty of time to watch it all before like we had to podcast. So I feel like it's still it's still good. It's still fun if you watch them all at once. It doesn't feel like too much, And I think that was one of the things I was worried about when we first talked about like the schedule for Survivor SA. Because I personally find Survivor Australia and like their schedule to be too much. Like I get overwhelmed by the amount of content. So I was glad not to be overwhelmed by this.
That's good. I also agree. I liked how the story really flowed for week one. I feel like stuff that happened episode one, we see play out by episode four. So it feels very manageable in that sense. Like, okay, something that we saw happen, it's not going to play out, and maybe certain things we'll see in a couple weeks time for those longer strategy things. But it seemed like a lot of like, okay, the strategy, who's talking to who's fighting with who, these different conversations really helped us understand what was happening episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I feel like because they, at least for episode 1, because it was split over those 2 episodes, I guess it would be like a regular 90-minute premiere if it were just that one person going home in episode 1. But I liked how it was split over those 2 days, because it feels like if it were more rushed, if it were only like a 1-hour premiere, or like in the US, they have those 90-minute premieres, but 2 people go home, I feel like we would have lost some of that like talking content, who's aligning with who. They could have honestly edited out the Breakfast Club 6 alliance and then tricked us into thinking, oh, Chappies was never in it. It was just a 5-person alliance that formed after Chappies left, if they didn't have enough screen time, if it were just like a 1-hour premiere, or if it were a 2-hour premiere, but 2 people went home.
I will say also they did a really good job with where they put the cliffhanger, because I know one of our big gripes with like Survivor US was they'd have cliffhangers that didn't make sense. So like the big one that I'm thinking about, I'm sure that you all who watch our Survivor US podcast know, is the hourglass twist whenever they try to make a like cliffhanger about whether or not someone will break the hourglass. Like, we know the answer to that. I feel like we didn't really know the answer to what like Teresa and Seamus were going to do for episode 1, and so it was kind of a cool cliffhanger. I enjoyed being able to just rush right into the next one. I'm sure Rachel enjoyed being able to like theorize about who they would vote for, so it was fun. It was good.
And with the extra, I guess, time, with the extra number of episodes, you said 24 episodes?
I believe so.
Yeah, so that's like double a US season. US is usually like 13 or 14 episodes. So seemingly with this extra time, we'll be able to get more stories and storylines seen. And I liked how after the immunity challenges, we got to see the winning tribe and the losing tribe each time talk about, oh, their reactions. Because usually for US Survivor, after the immunity challenge, we rarely ever see the winners go back to camp and celebrate their win or talk about things. So I really like that change, because it's cool to see the winners talk and celebrate after they've won an important immunity challenge.
Yeah, especially because I feel like this way, because the same tribe lost the first 2 episodes, it would have been really easy to just get no content at all from the other tribe. And so I guess I should say the first 2 immunity challenges, since the one episodes 1 and 2 were the story of one person getting voted out. So, but yeah, since the same tribe lost the first 2 immunity challenges, it could have been really easy for the other tribe to just not appear until episode 4, when they finally lost an immunity challenge.
And I also liked how they gave some background into who the players are and their previous relationships. Like we said, we haven't seen seasons 4 and 5. For other people watching, they may have also not seen those seasons, or may have not seen any season, and are just jumping in now. And so I liked how they gave that background information, some flashback scenes. And it was interesting to learn, Marion and PK kicked it similar as Michelle and Wendell from Winners at War. It's always interesting when like exes go back into the game together, because it's a different kind of like outside game relationship compared to people who are just friends, or people who get tattoos together, or people who have played in seasons previously together. Having that exes is a lot different. Similarly, having a married couple is very different than just having people in a relationship out there.
Exactly. So I think it also was a good reminder, and especially if like a relationship wasn't really shown on their season. Like, I don't really remember Steffi and Chappies being that close on their season. So
They weren't on the same season.
they weren't. You see, this is why I'm so This is why I'm confused all the time. But yeah, that way, like, no one would have known that they were like friends unless they said something. So
Yeah, apparently they met. Chappies was saying in an exit interview, like at a wedding before Chappies was cast, he was like in the final rounds of casting, and then Steffi was there, so that's how they know each other. But yeah. And I think a big thing to know is if you're ever on Survivor, never post about your friends on social media because that tattoo thing is coming up. That was like one of the big story arcs we've seen these first few episodes, and it could keep on going because some of the tattoo people are still in the game.
yeah, I love that they're just like tattoo people. Like that just uh I find that funny. Just the fact that they got a tattoo together.
So I thought it was a great first week. It was also really interesting to see how people wanted to change or grow from their original season thus far. I think two of the big ones would be Tanya and Pinty, who we'll talk about in episodes 4. But like Tanya being wacky and out there, trying to control it, but then realizing that she can't control it. Pinty similarly not wanting to be annoying and fighting with other people about food or shoes, and then also can't control it. So I thought like those are really interesting to see how people wanted to change, but maybe couldn't necessarily change once they got back out there.
Yeah, I think it's always interesting when people say they want to change because very rarely do people have like the self awareness to change well, I guess you could say. So I think the one player who I feel like might end up actually changing quite a lot from the first time they played the game was Seamus, just because it sounded like he had done a lot of like self improvement type work in order to like be in a good mental place to play the game again. So I feel like he is already playing a different game.
I agree. Seamus was getting a lot of really good content this first week, especially because he was the first boot in season 6. And I was honestly going to be so devastated for Seamus if he was voted out first again. Not even just first like the Francesca first, but if when his team lost immunity, if he would have gotten first out of his team, which would have been technically like third out when his team lost. But I was like, I just want Sheamus to go further because it was just really, really hard and sad just listening to him in preseason stuff and in the first few episodes here, talking about how much being voted out first affected him in his daily life. So I'm rooting for him. I really hope he can make it far to get that survivor dream.
Yeah, I always like to see people succeed. So yeah.
And Teresa also getting a lot of good confessionals. Teresa, we are Teresa stands from when we watched her original season, so we still got to be on the Teresa stand boat.
Yes, Teresa Stan train. Get on or get out. So
Yeah, and I think I love Marion's jacket. Like I think Angelina was doing like jacket ratings for US Survivor. I think Marion's jacket just wins. Her like army green long jacket. I want one. It looks so warm and it's so fashionable too. I think her jacket's probably the best one on any Survivor.
the fact that you like pay attention to their jackets baffled me because I could not tell you what a single person was wearing, like at all.
Next
So
time when she wears the jacket, it's such a nice jacket. I'm like, it looks so warm.
yeah, I guess I'll have to go back and like see it. So that's so wow. I should start doing jacket ratings.
Yes, yes. Maybe for the next off season, we'll start doing jacket ratings. But for episode 1, we start with a first reward challenge. They are wrestling for a ring in the water, very, very similar to the first challenge that started off at Winners at War. Like I always say, I love these physical challenges. I just think that it's so fun and different compared to like a marooning where you're on a boat and you have to get items and then jump off a boat. I really love these physical challenges.
I like this physical challenge because it's physical, but I was never worried that anyone was going to like snap in half. And I think that sometimes when like these super physical challenges happen, I worry for people's safety. So I was glad not to have to worry about anyone's safety.
Oh my gosh, the Chappie's side swipe of Seamus. I was afraid Seamus's head was gonna hit that pole. Like, I was scared there. That was so dangerous looking. They need to put some padding on that wooden pole.
I I did not clock that, but I guess maybe I should have been more afraid for people's lives than I was.
Maybe, but I always love these fun first challenges, wrestling, fake fighting challenges. These physical ones are fun to see. So we go back to camp, and a big thing that we've seen over these first few episodes is that there is this like emblem, tribe emblem etched in the trees in their main camp. So Teresa is the first person that we see notice this emblem etched into the tree. Then we also see Shane and Marion notice, and then she tells Dante. And then later we see Steffi and Chappies digging in the middle of the night, potentially for idols, digging in between where those emblem trees are to find an advantage, but it seems like they did not find anything. And it's what we said last season for Chappies, taking the food at night. You can't get caught doing these things at nighttime.
Oh, this was such a whole mess because it's like literally in the middle of camp, and it's like Chappies, especially because he didn't get something out of it. So it's like you made everyone suspicious of you, and you didn't even get an idol.
Yeah, if you're doing these nighttime shenanigans, you gotta keep it under wraps. If you are stealing the food, if you are digging for idols in the middle of the night, you gotta do it secretly. Similarly, like after Chappie's getting voted out, Pinty then becomes like Chappie's reincarnated with eating all of the food in front of everyone. But I can't tell. We see these advantages being found in episode 3, but I'm not sure if these are like the tree etching advantages or if they're just other random advantages they found. But yeah, I'm not sure if we got the conclusion to these tree clues.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like maybe the other advantages like had the symbol like on top of them to show you where to look, but like you said, it wasn't super clear.
Yeah, so the main thing from episode 1, besides we seeing like previous relationships, people talking, is the outpost twist. So people get chosen to go to this outpost, and they have food choices as well as another twist that we see in episode 2. So Teresa, Seamus for the pre-merge team, they're going, and then Shane and Steffi for the post-merge team are going to this outpost. And the first thing that they have to do is choose food items, but they don't all get these items. There's like food, and there's also tool options like for building and stuff, but they don't all get everything. They have to barter and bargain with each other in order to see who gets what item.
Yeah, I feel like the bargaining wasn't super like it wasn't as hard as they like made it out to be. Like they literally just alternated picking which items they wanted. Like it wasn't I feel like it could have been more of a bargaining bartering thing, but since they were both limited to only 2 items and like they both had different items that they wanted, it's kind of like what you doing there?
Everyone was a happy camper. I thought it was weird also because the losing team going into the outpost, aren't they always going to be at a disadvantage? So here, the losing team from the reward challenge was the pre-merge team, so Teresa and Seamus. Aren't they always at a disadvantage because the losing team is probably almost always 100% going to pick Flint as one of their items? And we saw like Shane recognize that, like, hey, they're probably picking Flint, but they're bluffing about having made a fire. So it does seem like, oh, if the losing team always has to waste one of their choices on Flint, then the winning team from the reward, who already won Flint from the reward challenge, has the upper hand because they would most likely get their 2 food items, versus the losing team always has to waste the choice on getting Flint.
I do have the question of whether or not Survivor South Africa is going to do what they did on 41 and 42, where if you lose, you have to give the Flint back. Because if that's the case, then the winning team might still want to pick Flint because even if they lose the Flint that they won in the immunity challenge, they would still have a flint. Whereas like if they don't take the flint back, then like yeah, it's not going to be that big of a deal. But like having a flint that Nico couldn't take from you, if that is going to be an element of the season, would be a pretty strong advantage.
Okay. So say it's not a part of this season. Then what are your thoughts? Do you think like it's a weird twist because I think everyone would always choose Flint.
I mean, I think it depends because we've seen people successfully make a fire without flint. Like it's a lot harder to, but like if one of your tribe mates was like super badass and knew how to make a fire without flint, then maybe you wouldn't care. So
Yeah, it's a weird choice. I feel like Flint shouldn't even be an option at the outpost because then you would actually have to barter and be like, okay, now we need some strategy. Who gets to pick first? Who gets to pick second? Because maybe you really wanted the rice or you really wanted the pap. But if you pick second, maybe that item was taken already. So I feel like just get rid of that Flint option and just have, okay, you can win Flint at the next reward challenge or at the next immunity challenge. Or if you go to tribal council that night, then the losing team would get their Flint there. So taking it off the table here, I think would be a little bit better. So you would have more strategizing around, okay, who wants what items here? And we actually have to like fight for it or barter for it.
I feel like there also was like too many items because they each got to pick 2 items, but there were like 8 items available. So it's like the chances that you're both going to want the exact same 2 items and like will not be willing to compromise are very little. Like if they each only got 2 items and there were 4 items available, then there's a lot more bartering.
Yeah, and they should have a bad item. So like everything was good, like tools to build stuff and then food items. They should have some like bad, really bad items so then they can
Well,
fight
when I
over
first
not
saw the
taking it.
bags, I thought that they were going to be like the covers that they used to use on the Survivor auction. And it's like, do you pick a blind item on the off chance that it's going to be really, really good? Or do you continue, or do you just pick the stuff that you know, even if it might not be as good, but at least you know you're not getting something awful?
Yeah. So Teresa and Seamus, they get Flint and a food item. Shane and Steffi, they get 2 food items. And then they read this next outpost advantage where they have to vote for someone to get an immunity idol that only works for this first tribal council. And then if they're on the winning team at the immunity challenge, they get to go to the losing team's tribal and they get to give away that idol. Versus if they're on the winning team, they just get that idol and they go to their regular immunity. If there's a tie, then they draw rocks to figure out who will get this first outpost idol.
I thought this was a really clever twist just because it gives information, which we always talk about. Like, information is one of the best resources to have on Survivor, just because once it's given, it can't be taken back. And so, like, knowing, for example, who Shane and Steffi saw as like the outsider on their team is really valuable information. And then when Tevin went to the other team's tribal, he got to give everyone at that tribal some really valuable information in that Shane and Steffi had lied to them about what happened at the outpost. And so it's like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, why would you ever give a name out? I feel like that was a little bit of a misplay, even if, oh, we are working with Tejan, like we want him with us. But because they didn't disclose that information, like we saw at tribal council, people were really confused, potentially really angry about this non-disclosure of the information. So it's sort of like low key, I think that Seamus and Teresa played this outpost advantage better by not saying a name, not giving up anyone, whether they're working with that person or whether they think that person is the weakest person on their tribe. And I thought it was weird. I personally would think the strategy for the outpost idol would be that you should always vote for someone on your own tribe to further your own tribe or alliance, because the other team voting for Tanya, okay, that could help the post-merge team by trying to weaken the pre-merge team by voting out by keeping safe their quote weakest person on the team. But if they lose the challenge, then Tanya is going to come to your tribal council and then give someone on the post-merge team an idol. So that could really mess you guys up if Tanya is giving the idol to someone she thinks is weak on your tribe or trying to mess up your schemes and plans, versus if you're always giving the idol to someone that you're aligned with. So, Seamus and Teresa, they like Tevin. They want to work with Tevin. They want to show trust there. They vote for Tevin. And so then Tevin, because you're working with him, you can try to influence who Tevin is going to give the idol to on the losing team if your team wins immunity and Tevin goes to the losing team's tribal with the idol. Or if you lose, then Tevin's safe and your alliance member is safe. I feel like the strategy might or should be always voting for someone that is in your alliance or tribe already versus voting for someone to weaken the other team.
Yeah, I feel like the idea of voting someone to weaken the other team just like isn't very smart in the long run. So yeah, I definitely agree that Teresa and Seamus were the ones who ended up playing it better.
Yeah, and it's honestly good for all four of these outpost players because they can say what they want, and Nico is going to basically verify whatever story they said because the entire truth is coming out. Like, you can't really lie about the outpost idol. You can't necessarily lie about the food items that you're bringing back because, hey, you have food items. Maybe people think you're lying and maybe you got another clue for a different advantage, but already you're getting 2 items and this outpost idol, and Nico is verifying this outpost idol at the immunity challenge. There's not that many places that you could be considered sketchy or lying about this here because there's already 3 advantages that are being given out. It would be a lot if there were another secret clue given out already. So I feel like these people sort of get off scot-free because there's nothing really to lie about. You just tell the story and you look less sketchy than usual.
Except for it ended up being that there was something they could lie about. So
yeah, that's why you don't give out a name, since that'll bite you in the butt.
yep.
But I think it'd be interesting if there were like an Outpost alliance or something. I've sort of wished that the Outpost twist continued. I thought it would happen for episodes 3 and 4 also, but it was only for episodes 1 and 2. It would have been interesting to see how the strategy of the Outpost idol evolved and who are we voting for? Are we voting for someone we don't like? Are we voting for someone to weaken the tribe? Are we voting for someone that's in our alliance? I think seeing how this Outpost idol strategy evolves would have been super interesting. So I sort of wished it came back for more votes, but maybe we'll see it come back next week.
It might be that it only like is once per week or something, which I honestly would be fine with, just because I feel like one of the things that we said a lot in Survivor US is that we don't like it when there's too many advantages. And I guess part of it is the outpost advantage, since it's like only usable the 1 week. It's a little different because people can't hold on to it all the time. But still, having one additional person immune every week is quite a lot. So
yeah, so we go to this immunity challenge, first immunity challenge of the season. The pre-merge team wins it and the post-merge team loses. I was excited because I didn't really want to see a pre-merge person go first because that would just be so sad. It's like, oh, they're already pre-merged the first time and then they're going to be the first person voted out of this season. It was sort of, it's you're like, oh, okay, post-merge is going to tribal. They've had that experience.
yeah, I really was glad that there wasn't another Francesca happening where the same person got voted out twice. And I feel like in general the post merge people needed to be brought down a peg. And I thought that the analysis that the reason that they all like ended up like not gelling was because of they all like wanted to be the leader. Like, I thought that was a really good analysis, and also kind of like what maybe got them all to the post merge in the first place. But yeah.
So we see Tevin, because he got the Outpost idol, he won the rock draw versus Tanya. He is going to the post-merge tribe's tribal council. He doesn't get to talk with them, prior or anything. He just shows up. So no pre-strategizing of, oh, who can he give the idol to? Who can he not give the idol to? He ends up playing the idol for Palessa, who is from his original season 6, which was interesting, although I feel like it could have potentially been a bad move, and maybe that influenced PK going home in a couple, I guess, next episode that we see. Because I feel like playing the idol for Palessa when you're season 6, everyone already knows about the tattoo trio, and you're now playing the idol for this other season 6 person. It might show to everyone else, hey, season 6 wants to stick together. Why did he give the idol to Palessa? Maybe he's trying to bring her in. People would definitely notice that connection, that they're all season 6 people, versus if he gave the idol to Dante, like Felix was saying, that's a little bit more of a question mark. Like, oh, what was Tevin doing? Is he trying to work with Dante? Did he just think Dante was on the chopping block, so he wanted to save him? That kind of thing. Because I feel like Tevin could have been fine with Palessa without giving her the idol. He didn't need to do that so publicly.
The thing is, I feel like it's better kind of like the devil you know versus the devil you don't. Like Tevin being like, okay, I'm going to be loyal to someone who was on my original season makes sense to someone like on the outside looking in. Whereas if he had like given the idol randomly to Dante, that could end up painting a bigger target on Dante's back, or it could end up painting a bigger target on Tevin's back. Like maybe Tevin didn't want to work with Dante, and so giving him the idol would mean that they'd like have to work together. And so it's one of those things where I feel like I think that giving the idol to Palessa wasn't a horrible move.
Yeah, I guess it'd be interesting to know like people's thoughts about it, because we saw people making like, oh, question mark faces. Did that paint more of a target on like the season 6 people's back? You know, Tony, PK, Tevin, and Palessa working together. Did that make them bigger targets or not? Because that would help, I guess, quantify for us whether it was an okay move, a good move, or a bad move to give her the idol. But also, you know, giving the idol to someone new like Dante, like Felix was saying, you could get some cross-season friendships and alliances, cross-tribal alliances. If there were a tribe swap or something coming up, then Tevin could be like, hey, Felix and I are close. He wanted me to give you the idol because you guys were close from your original season together. I'm good with him. I'm good with you. Let's all work together. So that could have been an in, versus, hey, Paulessa, like we already know each other. Like I gave you this thing. Now we have to work together. I think, I don't know. I think it maybe could have contributed to people being afraid of the PK, Tevin, Tony alliance and wanting to vote out PK and Tony next.
To be fair, I feel like it also could be like, oh, I'm not good with Dante, and since you helped him, we're no longer good with each other. Like we see Dante and Tony kind of get into an argument later on in this week, and so I feel like it's one of those things where it could be a help, it could be a hindrance, and so that's why I feel like going for the known quantity of Palessa, who you already know where you stand with her. Other people can probably guess that you guys are close, makes more sense.
Yeah, makes sense. I guess we're a little bit different here. So you're saying known and I'm saying unknown factor. So I like that. I like it. So we go to tribal council here and Chappies gets voted out. I feel like recency bias for Chappies being the only person from season 8 on the post merge team, and I think being the furthest person, like he was third place. He was the highest person on this season. The person that got the furthest by place number seems like it really, really affected him, and it put a huge target on his back because he's the furthest going person and he was just on last season. Everyone's seen it. So it seems like that really was his downfall.
Well, I would also argue he made himself a pretty big character and also not a particularly trustworthy character. Like a bunch of people were talking about, like, oh, he's the guy who stole the food. And I feel like on a season where food is already the subject of much contention, you don't want to be the guy who's known for like sneaking food out in the middle of the night. So
I think, yeah, his reputation, right? Like, you know, the reputation from the previous season, him digging for idols in the middle
like
of the night already.
he didn't do anything to combat his previous reputation also, I guess, is kind of what you were saying. Like he also went out and dug up idols, and it's like, Chappies, man, you could have saved yourself just by being a little less obvious.
I think, yeah, it was an uphill battle for Chappies to begin with because of his reputation and just his personality, you know, just who he is as a person, very outgoing, very out there. And I thought Dante's vote, when he was talking about why he voted for Chappies at the end, he was saying that he wished it was him searching for idols at nighttime instead of Steffi, because we saw in episode 1 Chappies and Dante were in an alliance, they were in the breakfast group, and then they were also in like a sort of a Aquaman bromance alliance kind of thing. So I was just like, oh my gosh, you know, Dante with that vote was just sort of funny because he was like, I wish it were me out there, not Steffi.
Yeah, that was. I don't even know what to think about that, just because it's kind of like, buddy, you're voting him out. It's over.
There was so much to unpack there. It's like, it's just such like a odd thing to say as like, oh, this is the reason why I'm voting you out,
This
along
could
with
be
all these
us.
other things. Yeah, like I wish it were me. It really reminded me of like Gabby and Christian, that scene when Gabby's like, do you want to play with me? And then Christian's like, in the sand. It's like Dante wished he were playing in the sand with Chappies instead of Steffi digging in the sand with him.
Yes.
So I think Chappies, though, he's probably going to get invited back onto another returnee season. Him is probably, you know, one of the biggest threats coming into this season. His reputation precedes him. He needs to go on another returnee season where there's more people that are like as big names as him, I feel like. And, you know, Chappies is in his Tony Game Changers era. He's getting voted out first here. He was the last person voted out last season to be the first person voted out this season. So like the parallels, and then like Tony, Chappies can come back and win, although not his second time, his first time.
Yeah, I think part of it is Survivor SA. Like, it doesn't produce, I feel like, as many well known players as Survivor US does. Like, I feel like a lot of their players are more strategy players than personality players, at least from like the seasons that we've watched. Like, it could just be that like fewer people talk about Survivor SA, so there's less of like a fandom surrounding it. But I feel like what I remember of the players, they're definitely like more strategy than personality. And I feel like some of the notable exceptions to that are Chappies and then Tanya and Pinty. But we kind of saw how that went for them.
Yeah, I'm interested to see this team. You know, they voted out Chappies, who you could argue is one of the better challenge competitors of his team. And it was interesting to see the first tribal council here. The 3 people up on the chopping block for elimination were 3 big guys, Chappies, Dante, and Shane. And usually that's not the case for the first tribal council. So I really was excited about that. You know, usually someone like Chappies doesn't go home first. And so I was like, okay, let's see these women work together. Let's see how far they can go, especially the trio of Marion, Steffi, and Meryl. I'm really interested to see that threesome. And then the Breakfast Club 5 now, after they kicked out Chappies, how far they can go.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how stable these alliances are. Just because I feel like a lot of them are not on super stable ground, especially because the Breakfast Club kind of kicked one of their own members out the first vote that they had. So that would not make me feel particularly good about continuing to be aligned with them.
That's why I was really surprised after episode 1. I was like, oh, this 6-person alliance, you know, they can sort of just steamroll. They have a 6-4 majority right now. Why would you mess that up? It's literally 6-4. You can just pick off the minority foursome, each tribal council, and then they picked off one of their own, which was really, really surprising. But I'm sad to see Chappies go, but I was happy for Shane to stay, especially because Chappies did just play last year, versus Shane hasn't played since like 2014, so 8 years ago. And like when Nico was reading the votes, Shane picked up his bag and put it on his lap before that last vote was read. Like he was expecting to be the one voted out first. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you know, that is really, really sad. So like wanting to see these pre-merge people have a second chance and play again. Someone who hasn't played 8, 10, 11 years, like I would want them to get more than just 3 days out there.
Yeah. The one thing about Shane, I feel like didn't really get touched on as much. It was his sudden paranoia that like Dante was trying to vote him out. Like, what was up with that?
I guess it wasn't really false, right? Like there was some truth to it.
But not really.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see. I feel like for Shane, I was like, oh my gosh, he might get voted out because he was like telling everyone who to vote for. We have confessionals of people saying, why is Shane being so bossy? Why is he telling me this thing and not like having a conversation with me about this thing? So I was like, oh, that's not really good for Shane, but he didn't get voted out. So hopefully he learns from this first tribal council. And it sort of reminds me of like Terry Dietz and all of the other old school players in Second Chance, how they were sort of, left out of the vote the first time and sort of, a certain someone wanted them to wake up to the game and play hard and play fast. So maybe now after he has this first vote under his belt, Shane, who hasn't played in 8 years, will get into the swing of things.
Yeah, I hope that it's not like Survivor Winners at War, where it's kind of like old school versus new school, and the old school is kind of decidedly crushed. So, yeah.
So Chappies gets voted out in episode 2. We go to episode 3, and Teresa starts to do some, questionable things again. She just says to people, Tevin found the idol, because she wants to buy time for herself to go looking for this idol. But this information spread so quickly, and then it got back to Tevin in like 2 clips.
I thought it's interesting because like she didn't even like try to be like, oh, I think Tevin found the idol. It's just like, nope, he definitely has it. I saw him take it. Like,
with my own 2 eyes.
Yeah. Like, I understand that lying in the moment like that is difficult, but if I were to be going on Survivor, I would practice lying to people so that I could make up a lie extremely quickly.
At least Teresa realized that. We see her in a confessional like, oh, that was such a boneheaded move. Why did I say this? This is going to bite me in the bum kind of thing. It spread so quickly, and Tevin, smart move for him, was like, heck no, I do not want people even to think that I have this idol. Perception is reality. We need to dispel this so quickly. And so then they go on this real idol hunt because Tevin's like, yeah, I don't have it. And then they're searching, and then they find it underneath the shelter. And then Seamus is the one who has this hidden idol.
Yeah. I mean, but I think Seamus getting the idol is the best like case scenario, and the fact that everyone knew that he had it was kind of the best case scenario. So, rip to Tevin. I think the best part of this situation was I don't think that everyone realized that it was Teresa who had started the lie, correct?
Yeah, because then it was weird because then like Tanya basically took blame for spreading the lie, which I'm like, wow, that is really nice of Tanya. Like, you want to be Tanya's friend in real life because like we saw in episode 4 later on, her going to bat for what she believed in. Here, she basically takes the blame for Teresa because she didn't want people to be mad at Teresa or anything. So I was like, dang, this is just such a wild situation that happened.
Yeah, it's almost like a comedy of errors, like it's something that you'd see in a sitcom.
So yeah, it was good for Tevin getting that idol off of his back. Semi good for Seamus finding it, but like we saw later in episode 4, people like Felix and Phil are on to Seamus and sort of want to vote him out because they see how smart he is. And it's a good thing for Seamus. This idol is only for the first 3 tribal councils, so it's void after the next tribal council anyway. So it's not like he has this public idol that lasts until final 5, and then people are like, yeah, we need to vote him out because he has a real idol. So he can get rid of it like we saw after this next episode. And I guess for Teresa, she sort of got away with this Tevin lie, and Tanya took the blame for it. So it's, I guess, a net positive for Teresa also.
Yeah, honestly, the only person who comes out of this situation looking bad is Tanya.
Oh, it's just so sad. Yeah, it's such a wild scene that happened. So we go to the immunity challenge. They have to swim out and receive fish traps and then land 10 balls on like a perch kind of thing. So, and if you win immunity and you win a fishing and foraging kit. So for the immunity challenge, the red team, the pre-merge team, they win again. Excited for them, but I was like, oh, I also sort of want to see both tribes go to tribal council this first week, which was answered in the next episode, but red wins again, and we see the post-merge people going to tribal again 2 times in a row.
Yep, and I feel like this challenge was a fun one. It was cool to watch.
Yeah, so we see Marion and Steffi, they find this other advantage, like we saw Seamus finding the idol. This was the advantage episode. So they find diplomatic immunity. And so this advantage is anytime before the merge, you can send you or someone else to the other tribe. So it sort of reminds me of oh my gosh, the advantage where you can send yourself home from tribal council, but now it's you're sending yourself to the other tribe. So we've sort of seen this in like Australian Survivor, but it's not really like a diplomatic immunity advantage. It's more of a twist where, oh, someone got voted out of Australian Survivor. They're not actually voted out of the game, but they're voted out and sent to the other tribe. So we've sort of seen similar things like this, but also not in this kind of advantage form.
I feel like there was a diplomatic immunity advantage on Survivor US, but I might be wrong about that.
Oh, I was thinking, it reminds me of Jeremy's advantage. That is what I was thinking of, like where he could send himself home from tribal council.
Yeah, but I
But
feel
I
like
feel
there
like
was one
diplomatic
literally called
immunity,
diplomatic
yeah,
immunity.
it does sound familiar. But also, everything is starting to sound familiar. Like the knowledge is power advantage in this most recent episode of the Challenge USA, they had a challenge called Knowledge is Powered. So it's like
Oh,
all of
apparently
these
there was a
words.
diplomatic immunity on Immunity Island, the seventh episode. Jesus, no. So last season of Survivor SA had a diplomatic immunity um, advantage. I'm not sure if it
Was
got
it the
used
same
though.
thing?
I believe so.
Okay. That's why it sounds so familiar then. But
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting advantage. I'm wondering, are the advantages not the same on each beach? So how did the post-merge people find the diplomatic immunity advantage, but we saw the pre-merge people find an idol that only lasted until the third vote? I do wonder if both camps had the same advantages, but it just so happened that they each found a different one. Because it'd be sort of weird if like one team got an idol and one team got diplomatic immunity, you know?
Yeah, I feel like both tribes um, must have both advantages. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair.
Yeah, so then it's weird that they didn't look under their shelter to find this idol, and the other team didn't pick up the colorful string they saw on their beach. But maybe we'll see them find that advantage later on. But I guess the idol one would be void now because it's after the third tribal council, so maybe it doesn't really matter. But then we see for this diplomatic immunity advantage, Marion goes and tells the Breakfast Club group, everyone there. We didn't really see her tell Shane, but assume that she told Shane as well about this advantage, which I thought was pretty smart, especially because the group just voted out one of their own in Chappies. So she's sort of, okay, hey, let's bring the group back together. We voted this other way last time, but actually, hey, as a 5-sum, it's still 5-4. We can still vote out the other people. So let's build some trust here. Let me tell you about this diplomatic immunity advantage. And plus, having a public diplomatic immunity advantage, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing because it's a public thing. You're going to get swapped to the other team if you use it on yourself or someone else. This is the kind of thing where I think you would want more people to know about it so they're not blindsided, so you can strategize together of how you can use this advantage better, and you're gaining trust of the alliance versus an idol. You should keep that private.
Yeah, I feel like diplomatic immunity you need everyone on your side to know about it in order for it to be effective. Otherwise, it's kind of just like you might be throwing yourself out of the frying pan and into the fire. So,
Yeah. Like, you need to tell your people what you're going to do, because if you just sent yourself or someone else randomly to the other tribe, they might be a little bit pissed off. Reminds me of the first episode of Australian Survivor, Brain versus Brawn, when one person just didn't tell anyone what they were doing, and then they had the advantage where you could send 6 people back home and they didn't vote, and the remaining 6 people on the team had to vote someone out. They didn't say what they were going to do, and then everyone was like pissed off at that person after. So I feel like with this kind of public thing that is going to be public, you're not voting someone out, you're not secretly voting someone out, you need a lot of people to know, at least the people that you're working with, so they're not super pissed off at you later, because they're going to be like, why didn't you share this thing with me? It's a public thing.
yeah. But like you said, it's kind of like the opposite of an idol, where the more people know about an idol, the worse it is for you, because then they can strategize around that and it's a negative for you.
Yeah, here you're like, peace out, I'm going to the other team. So for this third episode, the vote, it is pretty much down to PK or Tony going home, or Marion going home. And so here with the strategizing, it sort of felt like really gross, really uncomfortable when Tony kept on saying, hey, let's vote Marion out because we are concerned about her skin, which that was like really uncomfortable to watch, and I think crosses the line. It's sort of like, Marion knows her skin, she's lived with it, and you can't say she doesn't know what's best for herself, because you're not her, You can't just say we're helping her by voting her out. Like, that's not right.
Especially because she's played the game before, she presumably knows like what her skin can and can't handle. I'm assuming that the production staff is also aware of it because it's a medical condition and are able to help her manage that medical condition within like a confines of the game. And so it feels like one of those things where Tony mentioned also that it's like a way to get her like to go home, and the other like people can feel good about sending her home because they did it like for her own good, and it's like, ew, no.
Yeah, like, no one else knows what's for her own good besides Marion herself, Like, no one else can say what's good for her besides her. So saying we're going to help her by voting her out was just, not, I think, not for Survivor, Like, that's not something you should say as a reason to vote someone out, because that's like, that's like your personal life. That's not something in Survivor.
Exactly.
So we go to tribal council. It seems like it's more between Marion and PK now. So the exes are coming at each other now a lot sooner than maybe potentially working together. So I think, yeah, voting PK out is a smarter move because he is quieter. He would maybe be able to get back into the group later on, or maybe flip and swipe people onto his side to get votes in the future. Versus, like we saw after Tribal, Tony is more emotional. Leave her in, and you keep all of that tension in the tribe with her and Marion maybe a little bit fighting, having that tension there. And so I think, yeah, voting PK out makes more sense, but I was sad for PK to be voted out.
I wasn't particularly sad, especially because like the fallout of his vote out kind of made me uncomfortable. And I feel like of the choices between voting out PK or voting out Marion, like I feel like PK was definitely the choice that I would have made because of everything we just discussed, where like if your reason for voting Marion out is like for her own good, like that's gross. And I feel like there was a strategic reason to vote out PK, and so I would personally be more comfortable with that vote, and like with the situation as it was, I
Yeah.
don't particularly feel bad for him.
I feel like PK is a smarter move, but I feel like I personally would have voted Tony out here.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like the thing is, if we're gonna bleed over into the next episode, like Tony's reaction to PK being voted out, I feel like also makes me very much agree that like I would have preferred her go home. But also, if your problem with PK is that he's like kind of bossy and like wants to control everything, like voting out Tony doesn't really help that. So,
Yeah, I think PK's the smarter move. Tony's the more emotional move, like, oh, you don't want to live with her at camp kind of thing. So it makes sense, sort of either way. It could have a justifiable reason either way to vote either one of them out here. So, it makes sense, but it's always sucks to see people go home.
it always does.
So, final episode, we start going into episode 4, and we see Dino have a little mishap where he is basically falling into the fire, falling asleep into the fire, where then we learn that he receives second-degree burns on his hands. And I was like, wow, this is really, really scary, and I feel really, really bad for Dino. I'm like, to not have use of your hands in this game, that is really difficult. And it's so scary because if you didn't have use of your hands in real life, like for your job or whatever, if you had the permanent damage from falling asleep into the fire here, like that is really, really dangerous.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the incident where someone had to be medically evacuated because they like fell into the fire, which is, huh, that would have been awful. But then also, it was good for him that his team had a numbers advantage because then he could sit out without like fear of making things wonky, basically. Whereas, like, if he had been on the team that had a numbers disadvantage, like, what would have happened then? So, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully if they were at the numbers disadvantage, Nico would just say, "Yeah, Dino, you can't play," because imagine like having to throw those sandbags or you having to be on the holding the rope part of this immunity challenge. You would not, you're like, your hands would not heal quickly like that. You would probably hurt your hands more like that. And it's interesting because we've seen multiple people get hurt from the fire, falling into the fire over multiple seasons of Survivor, that they just have this open flame and they're all like sleeping so close to it and nothing has changed. I find that like interesting. Like, oh, no one is going to change this kind of thing. We've seen multiple people get hurt from the fire.
I think part of it might just be that like what regulations can they come up with that wouldn't significantly like hinder gameplay? Because like if every time someone is close to the fire, you tell them to back up, like they can't cook, they can't sleep someplace warm.
I guess like, like putting a hood over it so like you can't fall into it kind of thing, right? Like some kind of thing that like prevents it from like, some kind of barrier maybe. Safety, I guess.
who cares about safety?
Oh my gosh, but I hope Dino's healed. That's like really, really scary. I'm glad he's okay and it like, didn't get more burned, because if your head or something fell in there too, like that would be very, very dangerous. So it seemed like Dino was okay. They didn't medevac him or anything. So really glad for that, but also that's like a really, really scary experience to have.
Yeah.
So we go to this immunity challenge, and you have to hold onto a big net while the other team is shooting sandbags. If you win immunity and you win a future life reward. So the people holding the ropes are Felix and Teresa for the pre-merge team, and then Dante and Steffi for the post-merge team. And I feel like for a lot of these challenges, usually the men drop first because people are always putting weight on the men first. And it's usually down to the women in these kinds of like, how much weight can you hold challenges? So it's down to Teresa and Steffi, and then Steffi wins it for the post-merge team.
I'm interested because like the team seems to have different strategies where like they basically didn't put any weight on Steffi at all. And I feel like one thing that people like neglect in these kinds of challenges is that holding something light for a long time like still like fatigues your muscles. And so I feel like not putting any sandbags into one person's net for a long time is kind of like a missed opportunity.
I agree. I think that's bad strategy. You should at least put some in the other person's net. Like, even if you're going to pile on one person, you should still put some in the other, because at the end of the day, this is an endurance challenge. You're going to be more tired if you're holding like 20 pounds for 10 minutes versus Steffi, oh, maybe she's just holding the rope up for 20 minutes. And then after Dante fell, then people started putting more weight into hers. So it does make more sense because it is endurance. You want to make it more hard for someone by having the weight in there from the first second versus waiting 5, 10, 15 minutes to start putting weight in there, because I feel like that's another reason why Teresa fell, because the other team was putting more equitable weight into Felix's and her bags. So it was harder for her to stay up after it was just down to the women.
I think Survivor US like ran a similar challenge to this where they held the basket together. And so I do wonder if there's like a difference in like success rates when it's two people holding one basket versus two people holding their own individual baskets.
Yeah, I think Australian Survivor did a version similar too, but it was sort of like relay style. So, like, whatever, you had 5 people in line to hold the thing, and after the person at holding it like couldn't do it anymore, then you'd go back, and then at the end it was down to like the last person in the line to hold it, kind of thing. So I feel like we've seen variations of this, and it's really interesting to see, because I don't know, I feel like people don't strategize them correctly for these kind of weight holding challenges. But I think the relay style is interesting because then you get more people participating, and it's not just like, oh, Teresa lost it for the whole team, but like they were in the hero position here.
I think it's always interesting because it's like really the people who lost it were the people shooting the sandbags who didn't put enough weight into the other person's like bag quickly enough, you know? I feel like
Yeah.
it's weird because there's a hero position, but also everyone is to blame. I think.
Exactly, exactly. It's a team challenge at the end of the day, even if it does look like, oh, Teresa lost it, or oh, Steffi won it, yay. But yeah, it is a lot down to those sandbags and how many you can get in. If your people suck at throwing baskets, they're gonna miss every single time.
Mm-hmm.
So, like we said, post merge win, they win their first immunity challenge. Yay. So they're not going to tribal. And we see the pre merge people going to their first tribal this season. A big conversation that we saw after the immunity challenge was Pinty versus Tanya. They are bickering, fighting over different things. Like the entire first 4 episodes, we've seen this storyline.
Yep, like first it was about food, and then it was about food again, and then it was about sitting by the fire. Like it was a lot. It seems like their personalities were just not compatible.
Yeah, it was the same argument over and over and over again. So I'm sort of glad that we got some resolution here by having one person leave. So then there hopefully won't be any more of this fighting, but there probably still will be fighting because one person is still left in. But I think for Tanya, she just, like she said on this show, she has too big of a heart. She said she can't help herself and she has to call out Pinty's actions. She has to call it like she sees it. Because of Pinty taking more food than other people, because of Pinty sleeping closer to the fire than everyone else. So I think for Tanya, like, that's admirable. It was cool for her that she has such a big heart that she is willing to continuously call out Pinty when it's straight up negatively hurting her game by continuously calling out Pinty for all of these actions. So I feel like Tanya is someone you want to be friends with in real life, because you know she will go to bat for you for whatever issue you might be having. Like, she would be by your side.
Yeah, yeah. I do wonder if they made the right choice by voting out Tanya instead of Pinty, just because it seems like I feel like if Pinky was voted out, then Tanya would find something else to like make her crusade, I guess you could say. But I feel like everyone else also had issues with Pinty. Like people told um, Tanya, like, yeah, this annoys me too. But it's like their issues with Pinty aren't just going to disappear because Tanya's not there talking about it. So I guess I'm just interested to see Like if that will still be a source of tension.
Yeah, I feel like for me personally, I would have voted out Piney and kept Tanya because, like you said, we saw other people agreeing with Tanya, but nobody was willing to take a side in the Tanya versus Piney fighting because they realized, oh, this isn't good for my game. Let me just sit here and be quiet about it. Let me let Tanya fight Piney kind of thing. So I feel like if you voted out Piney, you wouldn't have that issue of like the food thing or the sleeping thing. And I feel like Tanya's so loyal, you know? Like, sure, she might be talking to all these other people and saying all of these random things, but I feel like if you have her, she would be very, very loyal. And that's what it seemed like Phil and Felix. That's why they wanted to keep her around to have her as a number. Versus Piney, I feel like she would be maybe less loyal. I feel like Piney would want to have actions go her way and maybe try to flip a vote or switch at merge or something like that. And so I feel like Piney would be more threatening in that aspect, that you would want to vote her out because she would try to make a move later down the line.
Yeah, so I think this does set up like a good foundation for week 2, but it doesn't really leave a lot of like big open questions. So,
Yeah. So it was between the two people rubbing the tribe the wrong way for this tribal council. There was some fake out about wanting to vote Seamus out, which would have been so sad. I was like, oh my gosh, they're really going to put Seamus out now. But Seamus, he plays the idol for himself. So I felt like that's a fine move. That's a smart move. This is the last time the idol can be used anyway. So he can just say, hey, I was voted out first last time. I don't want to be voted out first of my tribe this time. So I'm going to use this idol, public idol anyway. So he at least made it past the first tribal council that he went to.
yay, Seamus!
So Tanya's voted out here, and then we see Shona hiding a fake idol. I was like, this is pretty cool. This is amazing. Her idol that she showed looked pretty real as well. And then she's like hiding it and then winks at Nico. I was like, wow, this is chef's kiss. This is just such a perfect moment. I really hope this comes up later on because they showed us it to us now. I really hope it comes to fruition in some way and she's able to like play it or save herself with it or some big moment. I want to see it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because when people bluff with idols like that, it's like it's always difficult because does she have to ask Nico to like confirm it and stuff like that? Because I feel like one of the things that someone pointed out the first time someone like played an idol before votes were played or before votes were cast is that it then becomes like an expectation that if you're gonna bluff with your idol, you bluff all the way. So it doesn't do her much good to hide a fake idol if it's then expected that she'll like play it before votes are cast.
Or I guess on the other hand, people that have fake idols and they're bluffing with it by pulling it out before you go and vote, then people usually think, oh, why would they pull it out now before the votes are read? It's probably a fake idol. So it would be interesting to see, do people think it's a real one or a fake one? I feel like she could have a really great tribal council moment because she's going to pick it up. It's hidden under the fire pit in the middle. People would be maybe more likely to think it's a real idol because she can be like, yeah, I had a clue. I found it. It's at tribal council. You know, we've seen in Survivor SA, they have tribal council necklaces. They have those hidden immunity idols hidden at tribal, like the famous Palessa idol that Adam Klein referenced in Winners at War. So I think people could believe that it's a real idol because if she plays it up well enough, she could be like, I found a clue. Here's the idol. F you all. You're not voting me out, kind of thing.
It also would be funny if someone else like spotted it somehow and tried to play it who wasn't her. Just because I like chaos.
Adam Klein comes in and is like, I found the idol. This one. But oh no, it's a fake idol. I'm just so surprised. Like, this is so innovative from Shona. I'm so surprised that this hasn't been more in any other Survivor franchises. Like, this seems like such a simple concept. Oh, let me make a fake idol. That's level 1. Let me make a fake idol and hide it at tribal council. That is next level. I think we'll maybe see people copy this for future, or maybe we'll see some season do it for real and have this idol hidden in a kind of similar spot. So maybe we haven't seen US Survivor have idols hidden at tribal. Australian Survivor, Survivor SA both have had idols hidden at tribal council. So I want someone to use this. I'm excited to see how this Shona fake idol plays out.
Me too.
Yeah, so that's a lot for episodes 1 through 4, week 1 of Survivor SA season 9. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Did you like these first 4 episodes or not? Are you excited for the future? Let us know.
Yep, let us know all that and more. Also, let us know any other Survivor-related podcasts you'd like to see us do, just because Survivor SA is not going to take up the entire Survivor US hiatus, sadly. So we love to hear from you guys, and we will see you next week with another podcast about Survivor South Africa. Bye!